Hi, this is Eli Ocheltree of the SnoKing Beekeepers Association, and this is our monthly meeting, April 17th, 2024. And we are going to look at some slides and talk about what we're seeing in our hives. We're at the point where we're trying to be proactive. We're trying to keep our bees, as in the swarm season is starting. So this is the keeping part of beekeeping. And others of us are just getting our nukes. So looking at frames and looking at pictures of bees sometimes is very relaxing. And I have a couple that I'd still like to know what makes the bees do that. If we get to those slides, I put them at the end. I don't know why they do it. I hear different theories on what I call wonky comb, entombed pollen. Oh, there's several different things. Cross comb a little bit. We can make a little bit of a statement on that. But let's go ahead and start. This is the SnoKing Beekeepers Association, and that's an old slide. So I think we'll just go into the slides instead of doing Q&A first. But we do need to do announcements. Steve Howard is picking up his second swarm. He'll probably join us later, and he needs help. So anybody who wants to, that's his phone number. He works a lot by texting, a little bit by email, but he's especially a call text person. And he has said that he will start heading that up, but he needs help. And it comes in rushes. So anybody who's free during the day and often requires somebody who can just have the swarm equipment that they have in their car and be ready to just take off. If you happen to have a pickup truck with a ladder, so much the better. But at least what we discussed at the last meeting and what we discussed in like beginner, apprentice, even journeyman, we talk about what should you have in your car? Bee jacket, veil, box to put the bees in, maybe a brush, maybe a spray bottle of water, a sheet so that they can land on that. Steve said the sheet.
Pruners.
Pruners? Yes, Steve actually, the 15-foot high swarm today, the first one he picked up, he had a pole cutter and the guy said fine. He was great with him taking out a couple of branches. It was a big swarm, so he took out a couple of branches and put the sheet out and it all landed down there beautifully. He's already got that one in. He no sooner gets that one in the box than he gets a call for another one. So he's somewhere in North Seattle right now picking one up. And that one is fairly close to the ground again. Yeah, there's a whole list. So look at the list that you went through in class. Um, it's a good topic. I think we quickly went over it last time. Bait hives, thinking about putting those out. It's getting late. The swarms are already here. Best, and some people said they are seeing bees hanging around their bait hives, and they could be the scouts. They could be if you got it out early. We have outreach needs. Heidi just came on. So that's Heidi there, Heidi G. And she's going to need help at things like Earth Day. Uh, Everett area pretty much has some homeschooling groups that are coming, a few at a time, one day a week for a while. And they really are excited to get a chance to see. And we'll coordinate on getting some more. I think I have a couple of children's outfits in the boxes of beekeeping outfits that we've had donated to us. Keep the donations coming. It's wonderful. We're going to get the APMA and the two different hives. And this is going to be the handicapped year. I don't know if Ron made it, if he's on here, but he says, yep, definitely with his lifting being somewhat limited. He hurt his rotator cuff and I don't know what else. He says, yep, this is the year for horizontal hives, APMA, anything that does not require lifting heavy boxes. And someone donated enough APMAs that we're going to have one at each apiary. We have the classes are always going. There's one going right now on Mondays. I think there's probably a couple people here from there. And which Randy is on? Randy, are you the Randy that's going to teach beginner okay, there it is. Randy who's going to teach beginner starting May 13th on a Monday. And you're going to skip Memorial Day, but otherwise it's going to be Mondays, 7 Mondays, our usual wonderful presentation and lots of question and answer time afterwards. The other thing I didn't put up here, Gina Cuff switched the Hive Mind, which is all levels of beekeeping experience. That discussion group is going from the second Thursday, it's going to the fourth Monday. Okay. So I didn't get that into the newsletter. I should have put it on here. Let me see if I can get it into the chat. And I think gina.cuff@gmail.com. I'll try to get it into the chat. Any level from you have never had bees, your first year of bees, you need to kind of talk, you want to listen. And the Queen Workshop, I will get that started right after this meeting. I haven't been able to get to it because we were having a wonderful time as a club going to an event a week ago today. It was a wonderful event. We actually got paid. We're going to get a few hundred for that. And we did a honey tasting, a presentation on the detective mind and beekeeping, how beekeeping appeals to a mind like Sherlock Holmes, okay, if you are a Sherlock Holmes fan, you may remember that he retired and went to the moors. We had a wonderful time at that. I've got some pictures of that I can show later, and I'll post them on the Facebook discussion group. The Queen Workshop, though, I know I keep stalling people. I'm still planning it because the hives are building up, and when they start to build up, they build up all at once. We need enough brood to make sure that we can make some nukes here, but some people could take their queen cells home if they had some brood frames. We'll go through that. We'll have to have at least a meeting in advance so people know what to expect, decide what they want to do. We're going to need middle of the week people. We can't avoid that. We can't do it every 7 days. It doesn't totally work out if we do that. But if you can come only Saturday, or you can come on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, then we can get everything done somehow between two groups of people. That's how we worked it out last year. There is a WSU workshop I don't want to forget to mention. The morning part is free for the May 18th one. There's a June 29th one. It's in the newsletter. The May 18th and 19th one, the 18th is here at Puyallup. I'm going to go because it's free. Although I did go ahead and say I'd pay for the lunch. There's a $15 lunch if you want to sign up. I assume sandwiches or something. And figured if anybody wants to meet there, we never have in-person meetings. And I thought, hey, this is kind of neat. Anybody else want to be there May 18th and hang out? The afternoon will be a microscope lab, but if you give me a microscope, I spent years of my life looking through microscopes and counting on a hemocytometer, which is exactly what they are going to demonstrate in the afternoon, plus dissection under a dissecting microscope, I assume. So a lot's happening. I would go ahead and sign up for that, though. That would be wonderful if some of us could meet there. Okay, we're full in swarms. I'm glad I put these pictures up first, even before I found out that
Did someone say swarm?
Swarm. Yes, Steve, you're on. Okay, you get to brag a little. I was bragging for you.
I got two of them. I got two of them today, Tony.
Okay, the phone connection's a
Two
little bad.
swarms, and can you hear me?
Yeah. Okay. Good.
Oh, who got the swarm?
Anyway, Howard, I got two swarms today.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
We haven't had any swarms over here yet.
It hit the 60s
Well,
and
they're coming.
okay, Mike, MYKE.
Two in one day.
Yeah, I think Mike is actually available sometimes during the days too. You two get together, okay? I put your phone number up at the beginning. So I either Mike, Steve, put your phone number and your email in the chat for me right now, okay? And
I'm
maybe,
driving back.
oh, it's hard to because you're on the phone.
shadow right now, so I'm heading to the.
Okay, Steve is driving
Okay.
back from the second swarm pickup, I think. And Steve, you're breaking up. So check in with us later, okay?
I don't do well multitasking, and I'm all hype about my swarms.
Okay. Call us back when you get to
Will
where
do.
you're going, okay?
Will do.
Okay. We'll talk to you in a little bit. So, one thing that's happening now with swarms is when we in Western Washington we have cloudy weather, and overcast weather. The first primary swarm gets delayed. Sometimes this leads to a secondary swarm following immediately afterwards. This picture and the next one are two different swarms at the same place on the same day. These are very small swarms because these are actually hunger swarms, which is really absconding. I could not convince this very nice person that she needed to feed her bees. She just wouldn't do it. And the bees just said, no food, no brood, let's fly. So they actually were leaving. They couldn't really make it where they were. So they made a bunch of queens and they started swarming off. Needless to say, she lost her hives. I did help her get them back into boxes, but it wasn't going to work if she didn't feed them. Weak colonies need to be fed and protected a little bit. Everybody going out to get your nukes. I just put a picture of the laundry mesh bag. Don't forget, you may not want the bees in your passenger compartment. Okay. And these are a wonderful investment. You can use them year after year. I think last time I put in the dimensions and it's like 2 feet by 3 feet, 24 by 36. It will do most nuke boxes really well. Wonderful solution. Oh, I got my yellow jacket kill. Okay, Jen. Jen's here too. She got the first one last month. I finally got one. Anybody else? You get to brag. Okay. My traps are out. Registration, send your $5 in so that you are legal when you have bees. And it is snail mail. You have to fill it out, send it in with some kind of check or money order. It's sort of ridiculous, but it's the government. And it does cover you because you have complied with all regulations. If you do this and check your HOA and your local ordinances, if you need help with that, we can give you a hand with that. Enough of us probably live in enough areas. And the vegetation, my salmonberry's been really out. The magnolias are really out where I am. A lot of the ornamentals are still going in various places. All the pears and the cherries for me. Anybody seen apple yet? I don't know. And one form of heather. I never know which one it is. One form of heather is blooming now. I hope you're all taking some kind of notes with the stuff you're seeing. And of course, your pictures are notes. If anything's in the chat that I should know about, get a hold of me. But otherwise, go ahead. I see there's chat messages, but I can't really view them while I'm talking. And if you need to get a hold of each other, this is a great time. Find out right now. And Heidi, like I said, needs some outreach help up there about Everett area. I hope you didn't see any dysentery on your bees, but if you did, this is what it was. They'll do it on the white fence next, or they'll do it at the front of the hive. I've never had it this bad, but the bees almost always seem to recover from a touch of it. Even if it looks terrible, they usually recover. This has been a pretty good year, though. There were enough sun breaks, and that really helps our bees. If anybody had this bad, talk to us later. Usually, it's already gone away by now. The bees are getting chances to fly, and all of you probably have, the overwinterers have been trying to see what's going on in my hive, what's going on in my hive. And so we've had to use our slide outs, which remember, anybody who has a slide out board, that's your way to see what's going on inside your hive. And watching for mites, even though you probably won't see the mites actually drop onto your slide out board. I just like to say, keep an eye on it. If you did see a bunch of mites fall onto your slide out board, then it would be a treat right away because you should not have a lot of mites falling onto your slide out boards. Maybe you see one here, one there, but there shouldn't be a lot because you have so much capped brood. Unfortunately, the female mites are going straight in there and starting to eat off your pupae, and then lay their eggs, raise their young under the cappings of the brood cell. But just so you know, here's the size and the funny, like butter clam shape of a varroa mite. And if you are mentoring, a lot of you already know all this. Just make sure you show it to somebody. And if they can't see it, you have to make sure you get good lighting and a magnifying glass. It's that small. The other thing is when you have a big dead out, like at the end of the winter, you're looking at your dead outs or something. It can look like an awful lot of bees, but it really isn't. So I put my half cup measure right next to, I had to clean out a bottom board. And I was saying, oh, that's an awful lot of bees. And then I thought about it. I said, I'll show people what 300 bees, a half cup of bees, looks like when I spread it out. And remember not to take the campaign signs to make replacement slide out mite count boards until it's legal. And it's legal so many weeks after the general election. If they lose the primary, you might be able to take some signs earlier, but let's not try that because I don't want beekeepers to get in trouble. It's so many weeks after the general election. So in late November, let's all clean up the highways, right? And get free bottom boards. Because it's littering, right? If they leave the campaign signs there after they're supposed to pick them up. Before going in your hives, and this is really fun because I never got down on my knees and really looked in my entrance until I'd had bees a while. I hadn't realized that even when I see no bees, they're there. They're ninja style, hanging upside down with all those little hooks they've got. And they are checking. Those are the guards. They're checking, and they're checking everything coming in. So you may not realize it, but your bees, it's warm enough. I think everybody's bees are on guard by now. So if you think they're not there, get down with your veil on, of course, and look in. And that is some kind of a horrible dead out. I think the picture I wanted is the next. No, I had one that was the yellow jackets are fighting out, have been fighting with the bees. That just looks like a winter clean out. Always check your landing boards though. Temperatures are coming up. Let's see. Here's like April 12th at this end, February 14th over on the left. So it's been taking a while and there's been some peaks, but this is the general trend, the average. This is what's been coming up. It has been coming up. We're getting to that 45, 50 that the bees really can fly at. I'm slow. A lot of people you'll find that you're 5 degrees above this line for your hives. It's just the cross breeze on my ridge. Really good to track this if you haven't thought about tracking your weather. And the cracking open to check things. A lot of overwintered people did this already, but you don't always have to go all the way into your hives. You can peek and see how many are in there. So a lot of people already were doing that. And you overwinterers, I bet you remember scenes like this. Checking to see, and your bees are up right under the inner cover, and you're just checking to see if they're there. I've got an emery shim around here so I can feed them the pollen patty and fondant sugar blocks. If you haven't already noticed, if you don't take that out now, they will start making wax in this space. These little gals hanging out together, starting to festoon. See them starting to do that chaining? They're thinking about putting wax up there. After all, it's more than 3/8 of an inch. So I hope everybody's taking out their shims before they get filled up with burr comb by your industrious bees. I wanted to point out that okay, those people who are already keeping bees a lot, when you're talking to other people and you'll ask them, how many bees do you have? And they look at, you can just hear, if you're on the phone, this pause. You want me to count them? Um, and they say, oh, I don't know. Okay. When somebody asks you how many bees you have and you're a beginner, often what they're asking is if you look down at the top of, you take the inner cover off and you look down at the box, how many frames are covered, what we call covered and worked. And you look down between the seams. And like you get over this far, this one looks like maybe this one isn't getting worked, but these frames here are getting worked. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Wouldn't be surprised if there's another one over there. And you say, I have 8 frames of bees in that box. 8 Western or 8 deep. We count bees in a lot of ways. We count them by the pound. If you bought bees, you bought by the pound, 3,000, a little over 3,000 per pound. Hopefully you got a little over 10,000 in your 3-pound package. Somebody weighed their 3-pound package and they said it wasn't 3 pounds, which is a little worrisome. Because that's difficult with a package. It makes a big difference when you're going to have 21 days before that package can produce any offspring, any new bees. So bees are going to die of old age for about 3.5 weeks with a package before you could go, oh, now I've got newbies emerging as adults, just because it takes 21 days from egg to adult. So when you get asked that question, how many bees do you have? And then you could also say the box is half full or whatever. People who overwintered, you already know that sometimes your bees will take the top of the inner cover and use it as a board. And if that's the end of it, the weather gets better and the undertaker bees actually start flying the dead bees out, because when it's really cold and wet, they don't always. And sometimes this really puzzles beginners or first year overwinterers, which I hope everybody overwintered successfully. But when you see these, quite often you go, why are the dead bees up there? Is my whole hive dead or sick or something? No, it was just often too cold and wet and rainy, and the bees couldn't fly out if it's actually drizzling or too cold. Oh, I know why I put that in. I use these pier blocks with the adjustable brackets and the 4x4 or 4x6s, and my apiary doesn't look spiffy, but this is wonderful. I have ground that shifts all year round. It shifts, and that is my solution to leveling my hives, which it is time to level. If anyone hasn't done that, if you don't level, you end up with cross comb. And I put a picture in here, the comb that goes at 90 degrees and to what you wanted. One of the reasons that happens is your hives get off side to side, not front to back, but side to side. And the frames are a little bit different distance apart at top and bottom, and it violates bee space. Or sometimes beginners try to space their frames evenly. And especially in an 8-frame hive, 8-frame hives almost take 9 frames sometimes. It has something to do with the standard sizes for kiln dried or semi-kiln dried lumber. And you will end up with this extra space. If you try to evenly space out brood combs, the bees go, oh, there's more than 3/8 of an inch there between this comb and that comb. And they know in their heads that when they draw out the comb, there's going to be more space. And they will decide to go crossways. I'll get a picture of cross comb here. So when you are starting out as a beginner, whenever you have new undrawn foundation, push all the frames together tightly. All these here, get them tight together. So those shoulders, this part's the shoulder here, is up tight. Don't leave them like this. If you're going to have a gap, leave it at the side, a little at each side. But for especially brood comb, get it together. This is a coming out of winter. There's the sugar. There's my brood binder sensor. And the pollen pack. This was a very small overwintered colony. All my small ones made it because I obeyed the rules. But I didn't have any full-size colonies that I was taking through the winter. I had not intended to. And the yellow jackets made sure of that. They dropped the population of just about every colony I had. Ziplocs. One gal sent me, I don't know if Colleen's here. I think this is Colleen's. She sent me in just the pictures of Ziplocs. If you don't have a good feeding system, you can just feed your bees with Ziplocs with little holes punched or a little slit punched in the top. They're full of, not full. I think she said she did like half full. Didn't want sugar squirting out, but you fill them with the 1-to-1 syrup. So if you ever, like Steve just got a whole bunch of swarms that he now has to hive and figure out what to do with, Ziplocs are a great way to have extra feeders on hand. I like the glass jars because I can watch the level fall. I'm trying Hive Alive just because a lot of people think that it helps the bees. And I thought, well, I'll give it a try. It's a supplement you mix in with the syrup. I did that. I'm not sure if they're going to take it. So I like being able to have different jars, and I put that on. Some hives took it, some didn't really. So today I added plain 1-to-1 and put it right next to it. And if they only take the plain 1-to-1 or they only take the 1-to-1 with the Hive Alive supplement in it, then I'll know what they prefer. If they don't like it, I'm happy to go with whatever they want. And I think the weather has settled, but I'm still down to 32 last night here up on the ridge. And the bees hesitated to come out for those extra hours. I lose some flight time because the bees had to go into a tighter cluster going down to the low 30s at night. Then if it would just warm up and let me go to the 40s at night. 40s at night, it's like so much easier on the bees. They can decluster in the mornings and go out and forage earlier. They can get so much more accomplished. I'm going to reevaluate that tomorrow. I have someone coming over who wants to see my hives anyway, and I'm going to go through and see how many frames of brood. I think my bees are ready to just pop an explosion in population. If we could just get to the 40s at night, that would be a big help to them. But until that happens, sometimes the bees want to have the dry sugar. So in 2022, it was critical to give the hives both. Even in May, it was too cold. The bees were taking dry food when they wouldn't take the liquid because the liquid apparently wasn't flowing through the holes that are in the lids, punched in the lids of these canning jars. Here's another view of it. And to let them get up to that sugar, I make sure that my jar caddy doesn't completely cover the inner cover hole. And then feeders are always enclosed because open feeders feed robbers. So I'm not feeding robbers. I can't take chances with the club apiary. And I'm still watching the temperatures, which is really kind of fun. This is an old slide. It is fun though. I don't think there's anything to see on that slide particularly. This is a winter slide. I'm sure people did the peak. The one thing about peaking this way is later on, I jumped a slide. I'm sorry, I put these slides together really fast. Well, while I'm at this slide, this is the same tree I showed earlier with a swarm on it. Took the swarm off, came back, and there were little white flakes all over it. It's the wax, which is a really neat thing to see when you collect a swarm. Your bees that go on the swarm are not the oldest or the youngest. There's a few older ones, and they'll do the scouting for a new place. But mainly you get what we call middle-aged bee. I know it's middle-aged to be about 2 weeks to about 4 weeks old. That's middle-aged. But those ones that are 2 weeks, do you remember the 12 to 17 days post-emergence being the maximum optimal wax producing time in a worker bee's life? Well, you need those if a swarm's going to go set up house someplace and they need comb built right away. They need those 12 to 17 days post-emergence bees, and they need some foragers, but they don't want really old ones. They need the young ones that can really help. And those wax, as soon as the bees stop, get enough wax built, some of those younger middle-aged bees are still young enough to really help with getting that first brood raised out. So this is sort of an interesting evidence of what age of bee, these little white wax flakes all over, if the cluster for the swarm has stayed there for even a couple hours. Here's another, okay, how many bees do you have? So you count the frames. And when separating these, remember to use the cutting edges of your hive tool. Please, everybody who can get out to an apiary, if you're a brand new beginner, we'd all love to show you. All of us more experienced beekeepers would love to show you how not to destroy your equipment by trying to use your hive tool as a pry bar. I actually don't like this kind because people get this pry bar thing. You need to be using it as a cutting tool and then cutting through the propolis that's holding the shoulders of these frames together. Okay, and experienced people, I'm counting on everybody passing on the knowledge. Once you have the wisdom, you're part of the inner circle. I want you to pass on the knowledge of how to not destroy your equipment by sitting there and using that paint scraper like a like a pry bar. No, you're going to cut, scrape, use the little J hook there to lift frames. And when you need to push them apart, you can twist or like this, push them apart. And the edges of a hive tool are going to squish fewer bees than if you try to do some kind of yanking or even with your hands. It is gentler. A correctly used hive tool is so much gentler. I talked about a lot about lifting and peeking. The other thing you can do is sometimes you really need to see, but you haven't got time to take out every frame in a box. One of the things you can do, and again, this is something, if you come out to an apiary, we're happy to talk about it and show you. Sometimes you need to see the bottoms of these frames, because looking down at the top, you can see a certain amount, but if you can look at the bottom of the box, and if you set it, I wouldn't walk off. I was actually taking a picture. I usually would have a hand still on this box so it couldn't topple over. But by looking at the bottom, I can first of all see swarm cells, which tend to be at the bottom of the upper brood box, wherever that is. I've got 3 westerns here. So the bottom of this box, the bottom of this box, 3 westerns often are the brood box. 3 westerns being equivalent to 2 deep boxes for brood. And it's really good because I can look, and now without taking everything apart and disturbing the bees, this seems a little weird that this would disturb the bees less. But remember, your bees live upside down, sideways. They got little hooks on each of their 6 little feet. And to them, turning upside down is not, it's not as disruptive as being pulled out, shook, or anything else. Orientation is different to them. So this is actually a very unobtrusive, uninvasive way to actually look at your bees. And sometimes you can do it more quickly this way. Save yourself some time, especially when you start to have a number of hives to go through. This is obviously late in the season. I don't remember the month this was taken, but look at the stacks I've got here. This line's the inner cover, so these are all brood or honey supers. Same here. Here's the inner cover. I'm doing something on top. And it's not necessarily feeding. Sometimes I'm trying to cycle something back. So that's the looking at the bottom. Looking at the top of your hive, what can you see? And this is kind of a newer hive You notice the newer wood, there's very little propolis or burr comb on it. So more like what beginners would be seeing. And if your bees are not busy with brood, and sometimes with a small early hive, you put the package in, they don't have enough brood yet. And you can tell if they need a little bit of smoke, if they need to be a little bit discouraged from flying up, by looking down through the seams and seeing how many of them are looking at you. Bees that are busy and occupied, and the hive is it's producing, it's queen right, everything's right. They do this only when they're alarmed. A little puff of smoke will make them go back down instead of flying up. So I thought I'd show you that. All those little faces might need a puff of smoke. In a small hive like this, you might be okay. But looking along, and not all of them are doing that. In your first year of beekeeping, I want to show you lots of pictures of, oh, it looks really good. Look at that packed. Here's worker brood packed. Bees just in there so close together, packed in. Sometimes there's a queen in here someplace. Often when I have a picture like this, I was taking a picture of the queen, but she probably crawled under and went around to the other side. And people will say, how many holes, how many empty brood cells are okay? It varies according to the season. So I've got some pictures here. And the other thing is the color of the top capping of the brood cells, that changes with the season and with how many young bees you have. Let's see. Okay, there's a queen. People want to spot the queen. There's just so many bees, you often can't really see. People often think they have to get a bee brush or they have to shake the frame. Well, if the queen might be on it, you don't want to shake a frame. You avoid shaking the queen just the same way you avoid rolling her by rubbing frames together as you take them out. Same thing. But this one they're working on, if you wanted to see this, what you would actually do is the easiest way is to take your hand and put your hand down on the bees. And early in the spring, you can even do it barehanded. It's the only time I would do it barehanded. But you even gloved, you put your hand down and the bees will move out of the way. They're not alarmed. Instead of brushing them and upsetting them and maybe pulling out their little hooks on their little tarsi, damaging them, irritating them, setting off alarm pheromone. If you want to see part of the frame, put your hand on top of the bees. They move out of the way. And I put in pictures. This is the hardest thing for beginning beekeepers. It can be seen inside the cells. And I managed to get a camera angle. I was actually trying to get grafting. It's almost impossible to get a picture of larvae small enough to graft. These are all too large, too large, too large. If they make a C shape, they're past the point that you should be grafting them at to get a good quality queen. You can end up with something that's sort of a queen, kind of what they call an intercast. Yeah, these are all too old. Look at it, but realize how clear they are. If you're having trouble spotting eggs and eggs that have just hatched, sometimes all you see is the little bit of jelly. You just see the clear jelly at the bottom of the brood cells. So I really recommend an LED flashlight, even more than a magnifying glass. I have found that aiming that flashlight, a really nice bright one, right down is when I can sometimes get the pictures. The eggs are even smaller. I got the eggs coming up. Here's part of knowing what your bees are doing by just looking down. You didn't even have to take the frames out. Look at the white of that wax. New wax is white. So if you look at this first this way, and you can see, and maybe separate them a little bit, you can see that the bees are going to town, pulling out wax. Beautiful, doing exactly what you want them to do. Then you can take one or two frames out without rubbing them, make space and get the first one out, look for the queen, set it over, and then you can actually move through the frames looking at the sides of the frames, without taking them all the way out. This is the bottoms. Again, I had that whole box tilted up. This is the bottoms. And this is often confusing what you see down here on the bottoms. If bees find that there's 3/8 of an inch, they have to fill it. And this is burr comb at the bottom, but because they had a choice about what size cell they could make, and this is probably early in the year, they made it drones. They did drones. These right here, I think are drones, but they're kind of iffy. So taking a picture, and if you have any doubts, when you put this down, mark the tops of the frames with a paint marker or a little piece of tape or Sharpie or anything, so that if you want to come back and check them, you know which frames it was that looked kind of odd. But this looks, I don't know, does anybody really think there's a queen cell here? I'm thinking drone. And sometimes they will do it at odd angles. Here we go again, more burr comb. Checking for queen cells. Any doubts? Take a picture. See now, this one, it's sideways. I can tell that that's drone comb for sure. And it's capped over at a small size. The other thing about bees, okay, you expert people, you're going to be getting the questions. Have them send you a picture. My bees are swarming. And you're going, well, it's a package. I kind of don't think it's really swarming yet. Have them send you a picture. Sometimes the entrance is a little bit small. Sometimes the bees hang out because it is too humid inside and they hang out. One thing that's important is get the picture when you're doing this and take a picture for yourself too. So you remember, these aren't hanging out like all in the same direction. What are they doing? Another thing is if they all go in at night, that's often just the humidity. They're trying to get the honey dehydrated. It can mean early in the spring with young colonies that you do need to add the next box. So take a look inside and see if it's time to add the next box. Sometimes, I don't understand this, but sometimes I've worked on a hive and a bunch of the bees are confused and they hang out on the outside of the hive in a group, and I have checked and there's no queen there, but they do it. I would recommend you check very carefully for a queen, and then I kind of usually try to scrape them. Actually, if I can, I just take my hand and kind of try to brush them onto uh, a lid. If you have a small lid or something, or a piece of cardboard or paper or anything, and then just take them and put them back in the top of the hive. I look for a queen, but I think what happens is house bees don't really fly. And after you've disturbed the hive and some of them crawl over the edge, they get confused. They've never flown. They don't know where the front entrance is. Anybody have a better idea? I have a half dozen things today that I'm going, why does this happen? And that's my explanation, is the bees don't know how to get in the front entrance because they have no reason to go outside of the hive until they're getting close to 21 days old. Any suggestions? And then I love to use this picture in my classes. I can't give credit. Somebody just sit on there, go ahead and use this. Feel free to steal. So I have been stealing since then. And I hope that person gets good karma because this is a wonderful picture side by side. This is bees disorganized. And if you could see it, they're all moving around jittery. This is, hey, hanging out, chilling, man. Just all facing the same way. We part of the group. We grooving together. Everybody's okay. Look how they're oriented. And this is the one that you don't worry a lot about, except with a small colony, especially in the spring, it might mean they need some more space. It's getting a little too hot and humid inside. The dance floor is too crowded, so you have to go outside for some air, just like at a disco. But there's quite a difference between those two. So this is just a really nice picture of that. Okay, I think this is a picture of the thing that I don't know if anybody's explained to this day. And I think this was sent in to me by someone else. See these bees here with their legs out? I think these are washboarding. And there's videos of it on YouTube, and I don't know why they do it, and I don't know that it's solved. Washboarding is the bees sort of rock back and forth with their weight on their back forelegs, and they take the first two and they kind of scrub the surface outside the hive. As far as I know, it's always outside the hive, near the entrance, and like they're polishing the front steps, except we can't see what they're doing. Spreading pheromones? If they were nasonoving, I could understand that. Okay, that's number 2 on I don't know. Does anybody have a good explanation? If you see it, take a picture. You're lucky. Not everybody gets to see it. Sometimes I do things that I shouldn't do to my poor bees. This one, it's late at night and they're still trying to figure out how to get back in. I think what I did was I put a robbing screen on in the middle of the day because I knew that I would never get it done otherwise. And the poor bees were still trying to figure out how to get in at night. They were getting confused by the screen. They didn't come out through the holes, so they didn't know to go back through the holes. They figured it out by the next day. I think this was summer. It was warm enough they survived. But this is why if you do changes to your hives, you should do them at night. No bees were harmed in my failure to be a good beekeeper, so it's okay. Oh, here's my picture of always keeping an eye on what's going on at the front of your hive. Look at the drama here. Yellow jackets and bees going at it together. Pretty good, huh? Talk about action, adventure, impact. I had to put that in just because it was fun. That was last fall. The traps are up. Here's more of the white wax being drawn out. And then as they work it, and if they raise brood in it, it will turn darker with propolis and maybe saliva and such that they're doing. I think there might be brood in it right now. I think I maybe can see. I just wanted you to see. I love black foundation. I gotta admit, it makes demonstrations and pictures a lot easier. Here's the eggs, the actual size of eggs. I wanted to make sure we got that in here. Forget that grain of rice stuff. You need bright lights, magnifying glasses, whatever it takes. Or as soon as these hatch, first they stand up straight for a while, and like the second day they fall over, and then like the end of the third day, the egg hatches. The technical word is ecloses because they don't have a shell, so they don't hatch. So they eclose into a young larvae that's no bigger than the egg. Okay, how are you going to see this? Luckily, by that time, the worker bees have gone, oh, it's a baby, it needs jelly. And so they've surrounded it with jelly. And what you'll actually spot if you're looking is the little bit of jelly. So when you have that little bit of opaque, it's not absolutely transparent. It's translucent, opaque, milky white. That's telling you the egg has hatched. There's a larva there. And unfortunately, that's about the stage at which you're supposed to graft them, and it's very difficult to see. But come on out, and we'll take a try at it anyway in the queen raising workshop. And just again, this is how tiny, and then you're supposed to get them. This is about as late as you can take them, and this is a great picture. But you're supposed to be taking them. See when they've got that jelly around them without turning them over. Come on out and try it. It's hard. Here's a really nice compact brood pattern. Don't ask me what this weird thing here is. Bees do weird things. But this is really nice. Very few holes. Bees do need some holes. This is perfect in the spring. A lighter colored capping wax because it's newer. Nice frame. And if you are looking for eggs, sometimes you will find them over to the side because the queens come back and she can't lay anymore here and she'll start coming back and doing edges. Not always though. This one's okay, but there's more holes in here. Not as good. Early in the season, you'll get a more compact pattern, but then it starts to get broken up by a number of things. the queen lays in the spiral, right? So here's the bottom half of a circle, but it's empty in the middle. Why? Because the queen laid in the spiral pattern, and as she did that, they emerged in the same pattern. Later in the year, you'll see more holes. And there's various reasons. Maybe the workers took out some larvae they didn't think was healthy enough. Maybe they were using some for heater holes, which they put their heads in. You go head first into holes, and they shiver their thoracic muscles to generate heat. Even in the summer, the bees have to be heated. The baby bees have to be heated to 92 to 94. And a lot of summer nights we go down to like 50. That's the bees have to be kept warm, especially the babies. The adults can survive at 45, but not fly well until about 50. So when you see this, you're still seeing a good pattern in terms of circles. If it's late in the year, this can be okay, this many holes. Because with each time the queen laid it through this brood nest, different cells were used for different purposes. Water, heating, storage. This is a very light colored. I put this in because wax can be this light colored. And then as the bees reuse wax, the cappings get darker later in the year. And when you get your nuke, sometimes you get really dark wax. And someone asked about that. And I said, yes, because the bees were reusing what was in the hive already instead of making all new. Hey, if you're a winter bee and you had to live like 5 months holding the hive together before the next generation comes in and takes over, and you were overdue for retirement, you can't be expected to go and make white wax, right? On top of everything else you're doing. You've been doing all the housekeeping, holding everything together through the entire winter, and it's now time for the younger generation to get out, emerge, and do their job. And it's hard for you to make wax when you're old. I couldn't do it anyway, even when I was young. So it's getting somewhat darker. I wanted to show that. And here, yeah, it can get even darker and get really dark, but it still looks okay. If you're thinking, oh, does that mean they're diseased? Look at the shape of the nice regular cappings, okay? And you do get these irregularities, especially later in the season, or when you are getting a nuke, you're getting comb that was used and reused, brood comb. And in the spring, it will have sometimes irregular patterns, but it's okay. That's left over from the way the comb was being used. And so there was this gradual buildup of, okay, this cell wasn't good enough or clean enough or whatever. And you will get irregular patterns. This is still pretty tight. It's still looking pretty good. But it's a much smaller. And if this is an overwintered hive or late in the summer, this is still pretty good. And, oh, I know why this is here. Look at this funny comb right here. Okay, what's the latest explanation on entombed cells? Entombed pollen, people call it. The one I have heard is that when you see this weird waxy, and sometimes it's a very shiny black wax right there, those funny looking cells, they're filled in, they're sealed off, nobody touch it. Apparently, the explanation I've heard is there's some kind of pesticide or chemical contamination, or the pollen was poisonous or something, and the bees know not to touch it. And it can appear almost anywhere, not just at the bottom. Here's a bunch of drone cells here at the bottom too. People can interrupt me if they want. I just talk like this all the time. Okay. But if you've got something that would help, go right ahead. Okay. Flag me down. Again, not a perfect pattern, but pretty good. Yeah, that's a little worrisome. Hope it's just drone. I'm thinking just drone there, but I would keep an eye on them. If you can't keep an eye on them, I smash them if I don't want queen cells, I, I just smash them first and ask questions later. If I didn't want them. And, just the lighter colored wax in here. Again, not a great pattern. This one's kind of worrisome because it looks like it's maybe earlier in the year. Why is this queen? Do you see the queen there? Why is she not laying a good enough pattern? And if she's coming out of winter, could be. It could be that this was a poor layout of a brood comb. Doesn't look good though. I would keep an eye on that one. This one, of course, thriving, packed. Everybody's just going, going, going. And when you have this much capped, I've been showing you a lot of capped brood. Okay, mentors, remember, what do you tell your students and people you're talking with and working with and bee buddies? You see a frame of capped worker brood. When that brood emerges, it is going to need 2 frames that are not in intensive use right now. Why? Because when the worker bee was in the cell pupating, it was in a vertical position. When it comes out and gets to work, it's going to be like this on the comb, and it's going to need like 3 spaces to move around in, 2 and 3 spaces. So when you see this much capped, like I'm showing you, stop and say, I need to make sure that there's 2 frames of space that's not in heavy use right now for those bees to go on to. And that's often when you make the decision to add a box. Even better than any 2/3 or 3/4 rule that people give you. Just another comb. Every once in a while, bees will do odd things like they won't build someplace. And I assume something was there before that I don't necessarily know that was there. They hate hop guard strips. Sometimes they won't. After you've used hop guard, it's a Varroa treatment. Sometimes they really won't build out the comb there. A little of the hop guard got into the wax and they won't. This almost looks like that. I just love looking at pictures of bees. This is backfilling. I think this is backfilling brood nests with, there's some drone, I think it's drone comb there capped. And then bees are starting to backfill. Oh, and you have to, when you, it won't be long in your colonies. The first year, you'll finally get to see the different colors of pollen. And I think it's so wonderful. It is all different colors. I just did a new pollen chart that I need to post. Different colors. And the colors aren't always what you'd expect. Look at the green and there's grays. Red, okay, red, orange, and yellow you expected. Maybe white, light yellows. Sometimes there's an outright blue, which is
Hey,
rare for
Eli.
me. Yes?
Hey, I was gonna help you out with the message board again here.
Uh-huh.
While we're talking about the pollen, Karen had a question asking if you could, or had a picture showing the difference between capped brood and bee bread. I figured that might
Oh,
be a good time to show some bee
yeah.
bread.
Did we pass one? Does anybody remember? Because a lot of what I showed you were full. Let me see. No, I'm kind of getting down to the end here, I think. Let me think about that. Because like this one's backfilling. This is backfilling with nectar, which happens right after you get everything going. Hmm. Did I have one back here that would show the bee bread ring? And in beginner, and I don't think I included any of those. I don't see the bee bread ring on any of these. Does anybody see a bee bread ring? Because that's it. The bee bread is right around, that's the easiest way to spot it, is it's right around. I may not have one. Yeah, pollen. The bee bread does have the colors. Wait a minute. It has the colors of pollen, like these colors, different colors, and they put a little nectar on top. So it's like shiny pollen is what it is. And it should be around the comb. Okay, I'll have to find one because the problem is when things are rapidly growing, the bee bread ring should be around, right around here. But when the bees are really busy raising brood, sometimes, and especially after they've already capped it, they don't maintain the bee bread right here because they don't need to feed it to the larvae on this frame. Okay, I will have to find a picture of that, but yeah, I can't find one right now. Right
Can I
here.
ask a
Okay,
question?
this is close. Here, wait, this is it. Right around here. There's not very much of it, but right on the edge of this is an area where they're mixing the pollen. There's a red. There's a red.
She's back. You're on mute.
You're on mute, Eli. Oh, there you go.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I unmuted again. Yeah, my internet blipped there. So, can everybody still see the screen? Are we still screen sharing? No, I don't think so.
No.
Okay, and I had just found the bee bread. Here we go. Okay, now can you see that cap worker brood?
Yes.
Okay, that came back. I was just about to say, okay, bee bread would be right around, here's the top of the frame, would be right around here. And for example, there's a red pollen when they put a little bit of nectar on top of it, but they don't
Oh.
have a lot here. And it's often right around here in a ring.
And that's pollen.
Pollen with a little bit of nectar mixed in.
Mhm.
And they say it's actually easier for the bee's digestive system to digest it. They don't want it to be too old though, just a little bit mixed together, a little bit fermented, kind of like sauerkraut. It's supposed to be easier to digest. Apparently bees can digest straight pollen, but it's a little bit easier. Sort of like, well, how much cabbage can you eat without intestinal troubles? But sauerkraut's easier. So that I don't have a really good example though, but it would be right around here, and I've got one cell I can point out. Let's see. I get some pollen pictures though. There's just so much. So when they just collect pollen, sometimes they just put the tiniest bit of nectar or honey on it, and that sort of preserves it for a little while. Oh, for those of you who are overwintering, we always lecture about don't open feed. Open feeding is feeding robbers. Has anyone else used this strategy where you want them to finish up a little bit of honey here and there on different frames, and then you could store the frames because they'd be nice and cleaned off and dry? To do that, sometimes I do it by opening up with a decapping fork, scratch, scratch, scratch. With BC, when they sense open ripe honey, they have to take care of it. Well, if you put this out in the open, it's going to get robbed, which is one way to get your frames cleaned. But the better way is you take them, you do that scraping, and then you put them above the inner cover. And that's what I've got here. I happen to also be feeding, but I wanted them to eat up some honey while I was feeding them. And I think this is the spring. And sometimes you have a dead out, or in my case, I have partially capped honey frames, and I really just want to get them dried out, get them cleaned out. And so putting it here above the inner cover with it opened up, the bees have to move it. and they'll take the honey and move it downstairs. And that is a horrible mess that I never did figure out what it was. It was something horrible on some frames I got given, and the bees would not touch it. There is mold or whatever that they won't touch, and to this day, I don't know what this mess is. We had to throw it all out. We tried to get the bees to take it. What do I have that's really exciting? Oh, that is an example of backfilling. After the bees go through a big push of brood, they get into the nectar flow, and all of a sudden they can't get enough nectar stuffed into the hive, and they start taking every comb that was brood, and the brood emerged, and they start shoving nectar in it like crazy. And this is what we call backfilling. You can kind of tell by the darkness and by the honey arch up in the corners. You can kind of tell that this was a brood frame and they've converted it. Happens a lot when they go nectar crazy in June with the blackberry flow. I don't think that's an interesting. I'm sorry, I've got some that aren't very interesting here. A drone frame, in case you wanted to know that a bright green for drone trapping. There's a drone emerging. These are such cute, I mean, baby pictures. These are the only baby pictures I have. Drone again, drone larvae that turned a funny color one year. I can't tell if it was what they were eating or if something was sort of wrong. And we decided we were just going to feed some pollen patty and see what happened. Situation cleared up. These are not the bright white they should be. But everything seemed okay. And good nutrition is #1 line of defense for anything. Okay, queen cells. All over the place. That's what people are watching for right now. This is a late in the season. The poor bees are last gasp. They've lost their queen and they made a ton of supersedure cells. They just said, okay, we can't raise out any brood, but we need queens. And so you would never
Eli,
let this. Yes?
are you sure that's not an emergency cell?
Okay, emergency. Technically, they're emergency cells, but the manuals all call them supersedure. Okay, what Nathan is saying is a supersedure cell. The bees say, we don't have a queen. Matter of fact, there's the queen right there, I think. Yes, I think that's a blue dot. And something's wrong. And actually, I had a friend that used to dose too much with volatile varroicides, and it would upset the whole pheromone balance. The queen would be there. I think that is her. And the bees would just go crazy, making all kinds of emergency cells. Okay, the difference is when the bees know something's wrong with the queen, it's an emergency situation, and they slapdash take any worker egg that's just eclosing, changing into a larva. They take it and they do this emergency. We've got to have a queen. We've got to have a functional queen. And so they go crazy sometimes like this. A true supersedure is when they know what they're doing and the queen is there. She's somewhat functional usually. And if it's a perfect, there's actually a word for it, a perfect supersedure, the other queen does not disappear. We don't always know exactly what happens to her until her daughter emerges, mates, and is laying. That's a perfect supersedure. You would probably not even know it happened in large hives, especially at certain times of the year. Especially during the summer, you might not even realize because the brood kind of dies back in late July, August. You might not realize it even happened. That is a true perfect supersedure. If she's gone, she dies of illness, or the beekeeper steps on her or rolls her, which is our nightmare, that we're going to do that someday. If that happens, then that's an emergency cell. So Nathan's right, but nobody uses the terms correctly. I don't know if I'm going to confuse people. I agree, Nathan. We should start using it correctly. So yeah.
In my words, if the queen is present, I would call it a supersedure. If the queen is absent, I would call it an emergency cell.
But they look like it's an emergency, and I think that is the queen there. I think that was part of why we took this. I think Dawn and I were taking these pictures. That's a Dawn Mellow that I don't know if she's still in beekeeping anymore. And I think she used too much varroicide. I don't know if it was the formic, which will actually kill off all the young larvae and put the whole hive into distress if you have a little too much, or the weather, the temperatures aren't what you wanted, or sometimes if you use too much of the essential oils, the thymals, the Apiguard, or the Apivar Life. If you use those and it stinks up the hive, masks the pheromones. So yes, this is an iffy one. By the placement, I would call this emergency. By the fact that I think she's right there, technically it's a supersedure. Okay. It's a good point. Thanks. Okay, if you don't know what's going on, take pictures. Okay. I tell that up people all the time. It's so hard to describe over the phone. It's like, how many bees do you have? Okay, at least you could answer how many frames, right? But for queen cells, take a picture. Here they are at the top of the frame. Okay, this looks like it might be the bottom half of the brood nest. Westerns, two westerns, one on top of the other, but it still looks really odd. The pattern looks great. Sometimes you don't know if it's a swarm cell or if it's a supersedure cell or an emergency cell. Take a picture, mark the top of the frame in question so that you can get back to it quickly to check later, and think about it. Sometimes you can't make a decision right away. You're still figuring out, do I want to make more nukes? Do I want to smash them all? This one's here because I have a feeling that queen there is checking out those queen cells, and she might be deciding to destroy them. I don't know. I wonder if that's the same queen in the previous picture. I've been taking pictures now for 10 years. The drone larvae, once larvae are pulled out of their brood cells, the bees can't put them back. That's just a reality. They don't do that. And these are usually drones anyway, which it's a good time to take a close look at them and see if any of them have varroa on them. Since you're already there, these drone pupae are going to be killed anyway, and they are almost always drone pupae because they're between the boxes, and there's a little more, there's 3/8 of an inch. The bees will still put drone cells in there anyway because it's spring quite often. The rest of the year, they're better about observing bee space. But if they can find a place to raise drones and you didn't give them drone size foundation, they often will do it. There's a queen emerging. That was kind of fun, watching that one year. She's coming out. It took her a while to pop out. The bees were all very curious about it and watching her. And we've turned the frame. I don't think I've got the picture of Dave holding the frame. No, I don't. We've turned it up so we can watch her emerge. Maybe that was part of the problem, is we turned her upside down and she was trying to come out the bottom, but we were so excited watching her emerge. I hope you get to do that. Come to queen raising workshops. I think it's Heidi that said that the most thrilling part is you get to listen to the queens piping and tooting and all that if you come on the right day. I think this is a picture. I think that's a queen, one of the JZBZ queen cells, queen holders. And I'm just watching the bees to see that they're just interested and they're not bawling or anything. They look like they're okay with it. I don't remember why the popsicle stick is in there, but I think that's what I'm doing there. Just watching their behavior. They're not trying to sting. They're curious. Festooning. I know we're running out of time. Because I promised to stop talking, and then everybody else can talk. But you can talk right now too. But festooning, I just think that's the neatest behavior. You gotta take a little time to watch that. when your bees cluster together, hook together, seem to be passing the wax, and they make these long chains. It's really fun to watch they're doing this. They love having tens of thousands of roommates. It would be a nightmare for me. I tried a couple in college, no. They love it, and they're all hanging out, festooning together. I took a bunch of pictures one day because I just hit them just right, and I didn't want to tear anybody's hooks off their tarsi, but I did want to show. And then I put these back together again. Put the frames back together. This is an important frame because if you see this, it's too late. This is robbed out. This is a robbed out frame. It's been ripped up, and all the honey that was left in here or brood or whatever was ripped out. And that's why this is all raggedy and jagged. It's a good thing to see a picture of. Maybe you've forgotten, left it outside the hive, set the frame down, you go back inside, there's this cloud of bees over on one side of your apiary. Oh no, I left a frame out. Or if they came inside the hive and ripped out, that's very dangerous. If it happens inside your hive and you have a slide out board, you'd be seeing what looks like really fine cornmeal on the bottom of your slide out board. And maybe some bee parts because they were probably fighting each other over it and ripping each other apart. The robbers and the defenders. I'm kind of throwing in, what would you see in your hives? And what should you kind of watch for? This is a funny angle, but it's showing you the unevenness of a hive where things have gone wrong. The comb's a little on the wonky side. It's not as regular. And there's a lot, these are all domes. If you look at those bubble dome caps, those are all drone larvae. Matter of fact, here's one emerging right there.
Hey, Eli, can you hear me?
Yes?
Yeah, Steve. I got a call from the homeowner. All of the bees from the trees went into the box.
Good.
So I'm assuming we got the queen. So I'm heading down there now. So I'm gonna hop off. But I think we got that queen. Unfortunately, the first swarm I got, I should have left that box there like Mike Duncan told me to. And they probably would have gone in there. But right now we probably
Yeah,
lost a
but
whole bunch of them.
well, but early in the day, that was such a huge swarm.
That's true.
Oh, if you left
True.
them out there at when did you do that? Like 3 o'clock?
The
2 or 3 o'clock?
the second swarm was 4 o'clock.
Yeah,
And the
see, and
first
then by the
swarm was
time,
11 o'clock.
yeah, but by the time you got them in the box, I know you called me at 6 on this one. I said, okay, 6 o'clock, leave them. They'll go in for the night. The
Perfect.
other
Yeah, and they
one,
did. Yeah, the other
you
one,
leave
I
the
don't know. They're going to
box
be,
there. We're talking strategy here. Okay,
yeah,
you always try to figure out what the bees are going to do. If you think they will, they won't. If you think they won't, they will. Yeah.
they'll probably have to die. Or like you said, maybe they'll find another hive. But I'm not going to go back there. I'm going to assume I got the queen the first swarm too.
Yeah,
And
that was huge. And you had a huge
yeah,
number of bees in,
yeah,
and
in
yeah,
the box. Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So, okay. All right. Well, that was the update. I expect some more calls. So
Okay, so get in touch
if
with
anybody,
Steve. Okay. Yeah, get in touch with Steve if you can help out with that. He's Bothell, and already he went to Kirkland and to North Seattle. There's other people who are probably closer. And he's worked out a phone list, people that are going to call him. Landscapers and pesticide exterminator people. And they don't want to kill honeybees. They don't want to become honeybee murderers. You know, nobody wants to be known as a honeybee murderer. So they'd rather
yeah.
call a bee club.
But I'm hoping we'll get more calls.
Oh, you will. Trust me.
And
Busy
what
weekend
we could,
coming up.
and Mike said if you get enough, you go ahead and sell the swarm to somebody in the club, and then you donate it to the club.
You could do that. Yeah,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
would be wonderful. We can always use more money.
He said they've done
Okay.
that. Mike Duncan said they've done that. Anyway, I'll be quiet and go get my bees.
Okay. Okay. So we didn't successfully, did Steve, I don't think Steve and I ever successfully got a swarm. We went out twice together last year and we were always too late. Yeah. Okay, I wanted to point out this on the left is laying workers. I know that some people are seeing drone laying queens and think they're laying workers because when I started visiting people's apiaries, I kept running into drone laying queens. How can you tell the difference between laying workers and a drone laying queen? Well, you'd think you could find the queen. I don't know. They're skitsy, they're smaller, sometimes they're full size and look like a normal queen. And I don't know why you can't always find a drone laying queen, but you can't always. You notice that the hive is dwindling in population. Okay, that's one thing you might notice by the time it gets bad. But what really is the difference is this is all wonky comb and uneven and scattered around. A drone laying queen. Oh, here's some bee bread. I must have this upside down because there's bee bread there. See the different colors of pollen? And they're putting it right next to the brood. It's all drone brood because this queen probably never made it or genetically she can't fertilize the eggs. So she's laying the unfertilized eggs and all she's getting is drone larvae. They're all got the bubbles and the workers can't put them all in because I've got worker foundation here. So they can't raise them all out, but it's still pretty tight for a brood pattern. And here they are feeding them happily the bee bread. They're taking wonderful care of them. And they can't tell a drone queen from a fully mated queen. Here again, this side is really kind of wonky. Just look at the shapes of the cells and everything. Everything's out of order. Everything's wrong on this laying worker hive. Over here, everything is more organized. They can't put a drone larvae in every one of these because the cell's too big. They have to do it spotty, but still, there is a brood pattern to this, a brood nest pattern. And I'm wondering how many people are seeing this and thinking it's this. This is actually in some ways better to have. If you can't find that drone laying queen, it gets really, really messy because she has to come out. You can't put another queen in. It takes a while to introduce another queen into a laying worker situation. I would not recommend you try doing it directly. There's some steps that I would do first to make it work. On a drone laying queen, you got to get that queen out of there. She's a queen and she'll kill any other queen that comes in. Here's more drone laying queen. This really is. This is drone laying queen. I know it is. And it looks, but see, it's in the brood pattern, brood nest pattern. This is advanced stage. The workers have been dying off. The last old nanny workers are trying to raise useless drone larvae. The hive is just dying out. Okay, we are just about, that's it. I should stop, except here's wonky comb. I don't have an explanation for wonky comb. I had to put a picture of wonky comb. This is cross comb, where you didn't put them together or you're not leveled side to side, and they start doing 90-degree comb cross. Anything else that I really need to show people that I just can't bear to leave without showing you? More pollen. Oh, that's an outside hive. That is rare, but every once in a while a swarm cannot find a hive to get into. Woman took this picture, but she didn't call anybody to come get it. At the end of the year, the end of the season, there was that much comb. The bees died out, and then she wanted somebody to come. And I said, it's too late. They're dead. And actually, wasps started moving in is what happened. She didn't know she needed to call earlier, but it's very, very impressive when this happens. And it happens because the workers are trapped by maybe rain. They can't find a cavity to go to, and they've got all that wax. They have to start building comb. Remember? We've got a large number of bees that are ready to produce wax, and they're doing it. And so they started building comb right there. There's actually some more pollen. Okay, I don't think there's anything else that I really need to talk about. Thank you so much. Okay. Should I stop? Maybe I should stop the recording because it's probably long enough. Thanks so much for everybody listening and questions. And